Good evening, San Diego. I'm Chief Meteorologist Carlene Chavis, and thank you for tuning in for your CBS 8 Plus weather update. We are still tracking Hilary as it is a major hurricane as of right now, but that's well towards the south of us and also well towards the south of Cabo. But it is making that closer approach, now turning a little bit more towards the northwest, and impacts are expected for us into the weekend. So here's what we're watching with Hilary. It's going to be tracking towards Baja California. It does look to lose a little bit more of that steam and not be a major hurricane getting closer to Baja as it is running into some cooler waters, especially by tomorrow. The main concern for us is going to be a lot of rain. We're going to get a lot more rain before we even get that system moving closer towards us when we're talking about tropical storm force impacts, and those are mainly going to be the winds. We're expecting that to pick up with the strongest winds, those tropical storm force winds, about Sunday afternoon to Monday morning. So we're just waiting at this point and just anticipation. Of course, there's also some preparation that comes with that, especially when you're talking about a lot of heavy rainfall, and especially for areas that could see upwards of record rainfall, because a lot's going to happen within a short period of time. The latest when it comes to Hilary, it is still a major hurricane, a Category 4. There is Cabo San Lucas, and you're seeing it well towards the south of it, so well towards the southwest of it. Hilary will continue to maintain major category strength before it starts to interact with some cooler waters on its track towards the north. So it's moving towards the northwest at about 12 miles per hour. It is maintaining some wind speeds up to about 130 miles per hour when it comes to maximum sustained wind speeds. Hilary will continue to be a major hurricane at least for the next 24 hours and then start to break apart a little bit more into the cooler waters. As it gets closer towards Baja, it's expected to weaken even more, and so being potentially just towards the west of Baja California as a Category 1 hurricane with the latest forecast cone. That is subject to change, and that would be on about Sunday morning. We're also talking about the impacts for us here in Southern California. This is something that you're going to be hearing a lot of because it's the first time that it's ever happened. A tropical storm watch has been issued for all of Southern California, with the brunt of that moisture expected across San Diego County. So tropical storm impacts are what we're mainly anticipating. It's going to make its way towards the north, closing in on us right along the border, potentially as even a Category 1 hurricane, but weakening, and then our impacts look to be tropical storm related. So it does make that movement towards us on Sunday. Conditions start to deteriorate a little bit more. That would be about Sunday afternoon all the way through Monday morning, especially with those stronger wind speeds, and then looks to rain itself out right over Nevada, and that would be by about Monday morning. So kind of quickly making its way up there, and then talking about it being post-tropical as it continues to interact with land. As mentioned, tropical storm watch has been issued across Southern California. Also for the outer waters, that's not going to change. This will continue all the way until 2 p.m. on Monday afternoon. Once we get past that, everything, the models are in pretty good agreement that everything will start to dry out in our forecast and take us into about Tuesday. But before we get to that point, a whole lot of rain is in store. A flood watch has been issued by the National Weather Service across the entire county. Now, it does start on Saturday, and we're seeing that for the mountains as well as for the desert, and then Sunday morning west of the mountains. A lot of people have been asking this question: why are the mountains and the desert going to see a lot of that moisture before the rest of the county does? And that's because you have to take in consideration the fact that we are a big county that has 4 different microclimates. So we're talking about the higher elevations seeing that activity as the storm system moves in. So closer towards a lot of that moisture in the sky, it will start to impact. We could see a lot of that being runoff, also talking about the desert mountain slopes, seeing a lot of that heavy rainfall leading to flash flood concerns. And so that's why we are seeing this across the county, and we're going to continue to monitor the situation. And I can't stress it enough. The #1 problem with this storm system moving in is going to be heavy rain in a short amount of time. We could have some rainfall rates that could be up to about 1 inch per hour, and that is something that we have to just kind of wait and see. if you think back to when we had the atmospheric rivers, a lot of areas did get flooded. We did have some rescues. It's a lot of water all at once. As far as sandbags are concerned, people have been asking me a lot of questions. What can I do to prepare? If you are living in an area or have a business in an area that is prone to flooding, especially when we had those atmospheric rivers over the winter, it's a good idea to get those sandbags. We do have the information on our website at cbs8.com. You can definitely check that out, letting you know the locations of where you can pick up those sandbags. I do believe you have to bring your own shovel, though. So just keep that in mind in the forecast. A lot of heavy rainfall, impassable roads are anticipated, and also a lot of those dry creeks are going to definitely have a lot more water in them. And of course, monitoring the San Diego River, because even when we get about an inch or two of rain, we start to see those water levels rising, and that's going to be an issue, especially Mission Valley. When we look at the excessive rainfall outlook, you're noticing that by tomorrow it starts to increase a little bit more across the desert, and then becoming more widespread by Sunday, as we are looking at the bulk of that moisture rolling in at that time. So it's elevated west of the mountains, but the biggest concern is going to be across the mountains as well as for the desert. When we have hurricanes or any type of tropical cyclone, something I always want to stress to people, so you kind of know this, just a general rule of thumb, you can kind of dissect it. You can put a little cross and then look at the different quadrants when it comes to it. The northeast quadrant is always where we have the strongest wind speeds and also a lot of the rain. And so with the current forecast track, it has it moving from the north towards the south. So the northeast quadrant would be across the mountains and the desert. That's why they're anticipating the bulk of that rain, and we're talking about potentially an upwards of 5 to 7 inches of rainfall. It's going to be kind of sketchy over the next couple of days, and just really have to be careful out there. Let's go ahead and set the clock in motion and see some timing when it does come to these heavier pockets of rainfall. So we start to see more rainfall in the forecast, and it's starting to creep in a little bit more, and that'll be about 9 p.m. on Saturday. A lot of cloud cover across the county, even seeing some isolated lighter showers for Chula Vista as well as for downtown. But then you're starting to see some of those deeper greens moving in across the mountains in the desert. That's around 9:05, and then by the overnight hours, we're looking at more widespread activity. Heavier pockets of rainfall moving in towards coastal North County, also seeing it across the mountains, and then there goes the influx. We're talking about most of that rain happening on Sunday. So you're looking at heavy rainfall, lightning, downpours. Another thing that is a factor is when we have some of these outer feeder bands that start to move through, producing a lot of the heavy rainfall, you cannot entirely rule out an isolated tornado or two. I've been here before, I have dealt with this before, being in Florida for quite a few years. You start to see some of those outer bands that can produce some of these isolated tornadoes, so they cannot entirely be ruled out anywhere in the county. We are also looking at some heavy rainfall, some lightning that's being possible across coastal communities around 12:40 in the afternoon on Sunday, and then more of an influx as we go throughout the day. So we'll continue to have some heavier rainfall, and also looking at the potential for some isolated thunderstorms in the forecast by about 5:35 on Sunday. You're seeing that right along the coastal mountain slopes, impacting especially near Ramona as well as Santee, seeing it potentially even impact near Humboldt. We will continue to monitor the situation. It does let up a little bit, and that's around 7:45 in the evening hours on Sunday. You're still seeing some heavier pockets of rainfall in some areas, but it does look to let up a little bit more across the mountains as well as the desert. Still looking at rainfall in the forecast, but you're noticing it's not as widespread, it's not as intense, and that's about 10:50 on Sunday. But at that point, we could have a lot of standing water on the ground, and especially pretty saturated ground because of the rain moving in, and so then comes the wind. So the wind speeds look to be picking up as we hit from about Sunday afternoon all the way through the overnight hours. That's the window of opportunity when it comes to tropical storm force winds. We're talking about wind gusts about 35 to 45 miles per hour. Some areas for coastal communities could get upwards of 60 miles per hour. When we talk about tropical storm force winds, we talk about basically winds that are between 39 miles per hour to roughly about 47 miles per hour. 74 miles per hour. So strong wind speeds picking up. That's when the window of opportunity will be there. That takes us into the afternoon hours, as mentioned, for Sunday, and then all the way through about Monday morning, early Monday morning. Possible rainfall for coastal communities, 2 to 4 inches. could even receive higher, depending on where you're at in the county and just basically the unpredictability of this storm moving in, this tropical cyclone. For coastal communities, I've been getting some questions about this as well. Storm surge. Storm surge risk actually looks to be fairly low. Now, we will have some seas building, but for the most part, we're talking about coastal flooding being a concern because of the downpours anticipated and then also that high surf. 3 to 5 feet for us here in San Diego County, but north of us, especially for Orange County, could see an upwards of about 5 to 10 feet for south-facing beaches. That brings in the potential for a lot of flooding across Orange County as well. And another factor is the fact that you're talking about 3 to 5 feet, and then you have to take in consideration our high tides. They will be about 4 to 5 feet, and that's basically through that 12 o'clock hour in the afternoon as well as overnight. So that could also lead to some flooding. I have seen some communities, especially Imperial Beach, starting to get ready sandbags for basically some of the businesses out there to make sure that they are protected. Do the same for your own property as well. I just really want to stress that enough. It's better to be over-prepared than underprepared, and then all of a sudden something happens and you're like, okay, should have prepared a little bit more for this. This is why we're kind of giving you the heads up. Also, these winds are becoming out of the east towards the west. In a way, it's kind of like a wet Santa Ana wind event. We've had some fairly strong gusts when it comes to Santa Ana winds, but the reason they're coming from the east towards the west is because of the rotation of this. So that's what we're going to be looking at when it's moving basically from the north toward, or from the south towards the north, especially exiting out of northern Baja. For the inland areas, you're talking about those peak wind gusts up to about 65 miles per hour at time, but generally about 35 to 45 miles per hour. The same when it comes to rainfall, 2 to 4 inches, and that's by Saturday afternoon all the way through about Monday morning when we're looking at these the time frame when it comes to the heavy rainfall, and basically what we're trying to pinpoint when it comes to about 2 to 4 inches, but the bulk of it is expected on Sunday. Also talking about flood concerns when it comes to roads, you really have to be careful out there. Do not drive through flooded roadways. If you don't know how deep the water is, it can actually move your car. It can be a danger, it can be a hazard, and we just don't want you to be out there having to be rescued. So if it's a good idea to just kind of stay back, maybe stay indoors, I don't know, relax a little bit or try to, because yeah, you definitely don't want to be out there on the roadways. They will be impassable at times, and that's just a dangerous situation to be in. We would hate for you to have to be rescued because of that. Also talking about the impacts across the mountains, those stronger wind gusts anticipated. As mentioned, that northeast quadrant, you're going to get the bulk of it. So we're talking about the wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour at times, around 45 to 55 miles per hour, but the peak gust could be up to about 75 miles per hour. Flash flood concerns are going to be high across the mountains, as I showed you a few graphics ago, and then down trees and power lines that could lead to those power outages, and that's why we just really want you to be careful, also being prepared, making sure that your phone's charged, making sure that you have gas in your tank, and also making sure that you have basically a flashlight or anything that you're going to need that doesn't require having that power in your home, just in case this does happen. When we talk about this, it's always the worst case scenario because we want you to be prepared. So as mentioned before, always prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Also talking about some rainfall, about 3 to 6 inches, potentially could see an upwards of 7 in some spots being possible across the mountains. It's a similar setup when it comes to the desert. The desert gusts up to about 65 miles per hour. Rainfall totals around the same, and then still those hazards when it comes to flash flood concerns as well as down trees and power lines. So this is going to be a situation we're monitoring throughout the weekend. So we are monitoring Hilary. It does look to move in as a tropical storm, making impacts here for us in San Diego County. And then we're looking at a chance for rain. You're looking at a chance for lightning, also strong gusty winds being a factor, but rain really being the biggest main hazard when it comes to Hilary making its approach towards us. As we hit Monday afternoon, we start to dry out a little bit more, but I put the lightning marker on there because the morning hours, not so much. So by the afternoon hours, we'll start to dry out. And then by about Tuesday of next week, you're noticing the temperatures start to rebound a little bit more. Widespread and well below seasonal by Monday, but it's still going to feel uncomfortable because you're talking about some muggy conditions, a whole lot of tropical moisture that's moving coming in. We start to dry out by Tuesday. We keep that trend around all the way into the start of next weekend. Temperatures will be rebounding, but they'll still be below seasonal. Also talking about the 70s for the mountains, but getting right back into those 80s by next week, and taking a break from triple-digit heat across the desert. 70s anticipated by Sunday. You're getting right back into the 90s by Tuesday, and triple-digit heat by Friday and Saturday. Please be careful. When we talk about preparation, we basically just want to make sure that you are nice and safe. You're making sure that your home has sandbags if you live in an area that is prone to flooding, and also just making sure that you don't go out there, especially when you're talking about these tropical storm force winds anticipated as we hit about Sunday afternoon all the way through Monday morning. If you have anything that's outdoors that could become a projectile because of the strong gusty winds, go ahead and do your preparations for tomorrow. Make sure you bring everything in before conditions start to deteriorate as we hit our Sunday forecast. Please take care of yourself, and also thanks for tuning in.